Good evening. It's Facebook Love, number 116. It's every day, March 125th or something like that. I've taken several days off of doing new Facebook Loves, so I'm off in my counting. I was thinking today about how because we're not spending time together as friends and co-workers, that a lot of the ways that make us feel connected aren't happening, and I'm starting to miss them terribly. It's really it's starting to feel, I don't know what to call it, a little untethered. I'm feeling untethered from life in some strange ways, and trying to make sense of that. So I found a couple pieces that sort of speak to that. One is about the loss of a coworker, which memorializing John Lewis is definitely in my mind, but then also whatever awful number we're at. I don't know if it's 153,000 Americans, something like that, that we have lost, that we can say have died from coronavirus. The number is likely much higher according to the researchers. And then I have another piece that's just about people helping each other in those daily ways. So this first one is by a poet named Stephen Dunn. It's called On the Death of a Colleague. She taught theater, so we gathered in the theater. We praised her voice, her knowledge, how good she was, with Godot. And just 4 months later, with Gigi. She was 50. The problem in the liver. Each of us recalled an incident in which she'd been kind or witty. I told about being unable to speak from my diaphragm and how she made me lie down, placed her hand where the failure was, and showed me how to breathe. But afterwards, I could only do it when I lay down, and that became a joke between us, and I told it as my offering to the audience. I was on stage and I heard myself wishing to be impressive. Someone else spoke of her cats, and no one spoke of her face or the last few parties. The fact was, I had avoided her for months. It was a student's turn to speak, a sophomore, one of her actors. She was a drunk, he said, often came to class reeking. Sometimes he couldn't look at her, the blotches, the awful puffiness. And yet, she was a great teacher. He loved her. But thought someone should say what everyone knew, because she didn't die by accident. Everyone was crying. Everyone was crying, and it was almost over now. The remaining speaker, an historian, said he'd cut his speech short. And the chairman stood up, as if by habit, said something about loss, and thanked us for coming. None of us moved, except some students, to the student who'd spoken, and then others moved to him, across dividers, down aisles, to his side of the stage. On the Death of a Colleague by Stephen Dunn. I'm imagining the ways that we would be gathering for all the friends and colleagues and family members. People who've died of drunkenness, people who've died of heart attacks and depression, lung cancer, and all the many people who've been dying of COVID-19. and we don't get to gather the same way. Here's one by Sharon, an excellent poet. I really like her. She has the quality I like best in a poet. She tells the truth to the point that it makes your teeth hurt. This one is called The Space Heater. On the 10 below zero day it was on, near the patient's chair, the old heater kept by the analyst's couch, at the end, like the infant's headstone that was added near the foot of my father's grave. And it was hot, with the almost laughing satire of a fire's heat. The little coils like hairs in hell. And it was making a group of sick noises. I wanted the doctor to turn it off, but I couldn't seem to ask. So I just stared, but it did not budge. The doctor turned his heavy, soft palm outward toward me, inviting me to speak. I said, "If you're cold, are you cold? But if it's on for me." He held his palm out toward me. I tried to ask, but I only muttered. But he said, "Of course," as if I had asked, and he stood and approached the heater and then stood on one foot and threw himself toward the wall with one hand and with the other hand reached down behind the couch to pull the plug out. I looked away. I had not known that he would have to bend like that, and I was so moved that he would act undignified to help me that I cried, not trying to stop, but as if the moans made sentences which bore some human message. If he would cast himself toward the outlet for me, as if bending with me in my old shame and horror, then I would rest on his art. And the heater purred. It purred like a creature, or the familiar of a creature, or the child of a familiar, the father of a child, the spirit of a father, the healing of a spirit, the vision of healing, the heat of vision, the power of the heat, the pleasure of the power. The Space Heater by Sharon Olds. There's something about that. He did something that could be considered a common kindness, and yet she was in his office and unable to even ask for something that simple, that part of what she needed him for, she couldn't articulate, and he did it. And she felt the layers peeling away, healing her. Now that I think about it, it makes me think about what's happening to us. If we're staying home mostly, and staying away from each other, what are we peeling away and revealing? What are we becoming? What are we witnessing? And how can we move forward in the world in a new way? And how can we make that so? Somehow I just wanted to say a prayer. I won't go that far. But this is Facebook Love number 116, and I'll see you again.